If you are ready to avoid 3 costly planning mistakes that most new podcasters make, then this is your episode. Welcome to Empowered Endeavors, where business strategy and purpose come together to turn your passion into a platform and ideas into influence to create real impact in the world. I'm your host, Shaunna Lee, best-selling author of So You're Divorced, So What, and business strategy consultant for executive thought leaders, purpose-driven entrepreneurs, and aspiring storytellers. Together, on this show, we are transforming burned-out professionals into purpose-driven powerhouses. So welcome back. Thank you for joining me again in this podcast series. Previously, we talked about the 3 secrets that nobody tells you about podcasting success. So if you didn't catch that episode, be sure to go back and listen to that one. And today we want to talk about these planning mistakes and how it can derail even the most passionate podcasters, and it can end up costing you time and money. So this episode today is for all of you out there who are looking to start your own podcast, and maybe those of you who have already started your show, but you're struggling to maybe stay consistent and continue showing up. So I'm going to walk you through these top 3 mistakes that, listen, are costly, and most people make them. So if you are falling into this category, don't worry, you are not alone, and we're going to talk through how to get you unstuck. So mistake number 1, overcomplicating the launch plan. This is the top mistake I see most aspiring podcasters make, is that they are overcomplicating what it takes to actually get their show started. So I will tell you, I was guilty of the same. I was planning and planning and planning. And if I'm honest, I was a little scared to launch. And so being able to hit publish and share the episode, I felt as if everyone in the world was going to listen to what I was saying. And I was a little too concerned with what they might think about my episode. And here's what I quickly realized. It takes a lot to get people to listen to your shows. So don't worry about what people are going to think about it, and focus more on getting launched quickly. So one of the things that I walk you through in my pod launch program is how to do just that. How do you launch quickly? My big goal is always for my clients to launch in under 30 days. And the reason I pick 30 days is not because it's a magic number necessarily, but it's just to show you that you don't need months and months of planning to get started. What you need is a simple plan, action steps to get you there, and the ability to create that momentum. So there is this myth of having to have it all perfect before we launch, making sure that you have fully learned how to edit your episodes, making sure that you have perfected your cover design, making sure that you are, perfecting each and every step. And here's what I will tell you. With the cover design specifically, you could change your mind on every single episode and change the cover every single episode. So there is nothing tying you to the very first one that you use. One of the tips I like to give people, I actually learned this when I was publishing my book from my editor, and that was to provide in social media a few different examples of what that cover will look like so that people can vote on it. Now, here's the secret. It doesn't really matter if you need their input or not. You could have already decided, but it gets people engaged. It gets people paying attention and kind of interested. So it's building the interest before you launch. So that's one of my favorite little tips to share in how you can kind of build some buzz around your show before you launch. And, the hidden benefit is that it gets you choosing a cover design quickly and moving on to the next step. So you're not getting stuck on any one of those things. And, when it comes to editing, as an example of where people try to perfect every single thing before they launch, what I will tell you is there are actually some really successful podcasters who don't edit their shows at all. Now, the idea of not editing out my little bloopers and misspeaks, that's not even a word, but the ways that I kind of flub up what I'm trying to say, the idea of just sharing that with everyone is appalling to me. However, there are a lot of people who think that there is a more authentic version of them that includes all of those. And so it makes their life easier. They don't edit, they hit record, they share, and they move on. So in any way that you are overcomplicating the attempt to be perfect, I would say that would be mistake number one that I see most new podcasters make. The key is to simplify your process to minimize how many decisions you need to make and focus on what truly matters. And that is launching your show quickly, getting your voice out into the world so that your audience can connect with you. So mistake number one, overcomplicating the launch plan. If we look at the second most costly mistake, that is ignoring your long-term strategy. So I'm all for launching quickly, and obviously that is what I am a huge proponent of when I am telling you about my pod launch program. However, there is a long-term strategy that you need to keep in mind in order to be successful with podcasting. So a lot of people will only plan out their first couple episodes, and then they get stuck and they run out of what to say. And listen, I've been guilty of the same. The reason I can tell you that this is a mistake is because I made this one. So being able to kind of plan out the next half a dozen to a dozen episodes gives you some momentum. And so then you don't run out of things to talk about, and it gives you a long-term roadmap for your content. It gives you the ability to kind of build some momentum in the topic or the category or the theme that you're covering on that particular series of episodes. And it also, the hidden benefit, it also provides you the ability to prevent getting burnout. So just like anything, podcasting can create a burnout when you are putting into your show more energy than what you are getting back, engaging with your audience. So being able to build in your long-term strategy behind what your content is going to do and how that is leading your listeners down a path with you, being able to kind of tie each episode to that actual strategy. Again, it doesn't have to be for a business necessarily. Mine obviously is. My whole podcast is around generating leads for my business, but it doesn't have to be your goal with your audience. And being able to kind of build in that strategy and know what your long-term goal is will help prevent you from being burnt out and allow you to plan out that content in a more strategic way. My favorite tip to provide to people or to give to people is around batching and repurposing your content. So kind of two different things there, but the ability to sit down in one day and record multiple episodes, that batching allows you to utilize your energy of the day in the best way possible, but also gives you the ability to kind of build up that content so that you have it ready to be edited and shared, and you can schedule it in advance. And it minimizes the week after week monotony of the admin tasks that go into creating a show and maintaining a podcast. The other piece of that is around repurposing your content. So when it comes to sharing your episodes, it's not always enough to just be sure that you are including really healthy, robust show notes on your podcast website, and then also sharing in social media, but being able to repurpose that content in other ways. One of my favorite ways to kind of get people over the hump of putting their podcasts on YouTube specifically is this. You can create and record one episode It can be audio only. It doesn't have to be video, and it can go on YouTube as well as the podcast platforms. Those are two different audiences entirely. People who are on YouTube looking for information are not in the podcast mindset necessarily, but the same content can be utilized in both of those spaces. And if you're going to go to the effort of creating an episode, why not reach two different audiences with one piece of content? The other way I like to repurpose content from a podcast specifically is I will use the outline that I have used to speak through my podcast. This is one of the things that I have shared previously, but I'll share here again, is there's kind of three different ways that I have practiced and honed in on my tactic for creating episodes. So in Jenna Kutcher's program, she talked through how she scripts out every single one of her episodes. So she fully writes out the episode and then reads it, and that becomes her podcast episode. I have attempted that, and it sounds like I'm a robot reading my own words, and I don't like that the way it sounds as much. So I much prefer me talking through like a conversation. I feel like it's a little more interesting. It's easier to engage with. And so I prefer to not script mine. I have also attempted to just kind of riff on it, say, oh, okay, this is the topic of the day. Let's see where it goes. And I always forget something to say when I do that. I tend to ramble on the wrong topics, and they just end up being much shorter episodes. I always want to aim to be right at about 30 minutes for you guys. And, some weeks that's closer to 20 minutes, some weeks that's closer to 40 minutes. But as long as we're kind of in that range of 30 minutes, that's my goal. And what has been really successful for me to get there was around this outline. I promise I'm coming back to my point. So I create an outline. It has bullet points in each of the different topics that I want to talk about. I have a few little examples, anecdotes, or stories that I want to share. It allows me to kind of just talk through it, but also know that I'm not going to forget anything, that I've got a little bit more structure to the length of the episode. And so that works really well for me. Now, when it comes to repurposing my episode content, what I will do is create a blog or a Substack article or a Medium entry, and that comes from the outline that I've used for my episode. That becomes another piece of written content that I can share with an audience in a different space. So I create the content one time and I repurpose it in a couple different ways. That allows me to expand my reach and build my audience in multiple different arenas. So mistake number 3 is tied into that audience specifically. So the third mistake that I see a lot of new podcasters make, and I myself made this one as well, is not knowing your audience. So it's easy to start a podcast and think you've got something, witty or insightful to say. But if you are not connecting with who it is that you're talking to, then it will land flat. It will not engage people in the same way that it does when you're talking to that person. So in this example, in this podcast series, I'm talking to those of you who want to start podcasts. I'm talking to you as my audience. And when I have you in my mind as a clear listener, it allows me to build momentum, grow my episodes, grow my audience in a more strategic and thoughtful way. When we are podcasting without a clear listener in mind, that's what leads to slow growth, months after months of putting out episodes to have very few people listen. It is due to not knowing who it is you're talking to. So that is why in the toolkit that I provide you, one of the very first things we do is identify who your audience is so that you can know exactly who it is that you're talking to, what they do for a living, what their home life looks like. Are they a parent? Are they working? Are they artists? Whatever the case may be, being able to hone in on who your audience is crucial. And without it, you will have a very slow growing show. So let's talk about how you can define your niche and speak directly to your ideal audience. So in the Pod Launch Toolkit, I actually give you a checklist with questions to walk through and answer. And that allows you to really hone in on who it is you're talking to. You want to figure out what are the demographics for that person. Are they male or female? How old are they? What do they do for a living? What do they do for fun? As you walk through those different demographic and interests questions, you will hone in and define your niche, and it'll give you the ability to speak directly to your audience. So in my example, I'm speaking directly to those of you who want to start a podcast. And, obviously in the podcast series, that's what we're focused on. But as a larger audience for this podcast, I'm talking to anyone who is looking to better align with what they are passionate about and find a way to monetize that. So I'm providing you all the different business strategies that you can apply to your purpose so that you can make a bigger impact in the world. Because at the end of the day, my why is helping to raise the consciousness of the planet, to make this world a better place than I found. And the shit show that we are currently in, if I can do anything to provide a world where we are focused on growth and evolution and being kind, that is my part of the puzzle. And so being able to really speak directly to your audience is important. It allows you to engage with them and to further refine your content as time goes on. So as you are creating a new theme or generating a new series on the show, as you're generating that content and kind of talking through those ideas and engaging with your audience, in the last episode, we talked about some of the ways that you can build engagement. And that could be utilizing polls. It could be generating an email list where you are encouraging your listeners to reply, whether you are posting in social media and getting engagement in that way. Being able to build that two-way engagement allows you to refine your content over time. As you get questions, as you figure out what your audience wants to hear more of, you're able to kind of go down that path with them and provide what they are looking for. So there you have it, my friends, the 3 mistakes that are most costly for my new podcasters out there. You don't want to overcomplicate your launch plan. You don't want to ignore your long-term strategy, and you need to know your audience. If you can do those 3 things and avoid those 3 mistakes, you will be on your way to a successful podcast much sooner than I was. And that, my friends, is my goal for you. I want you to launch quickly and I want you to see success fast. So one of the things that I love to remind my new podcaster friends of is taking those small baby action steps each week. So for this week, I would like to encourage you to review your podcast planning process and to make those tweaks where necessary. So tweak what needs changing, pivot as you need to, and be sure that you are taking action every day, big or small, towards your overall goal. So if you are ready to launch your podcast and you'd like help with a clear plan, then be sure to download the Pod Launch Toolkit. It is your ultimate starter kit for my newbies, for my beginners, and you can find it at shaunalee.com/podlaunchtoolkit. Pod Launch Toolkit. It is everything you need to start your podcast in under 30 days with only the equipment you already have. It's also, the direct link is also in the podcast show notes and the YouTube description below. So be sure to check it out and let me know if you've got questions. And in the meantime, please remember that your story matters. The world needs to hear it. So let's build something extraordinary together. Until next time, friends.